Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening for the USC Comedy Festival Volume 5. I'm Alex Zago, the Director of Programming at the School of Cinematic Arts. I'd like to thank our dedicated USC Comedy faculty and staff, as well as USC Visions and Voices, the Arts and Humanities Initiative, who have generously sponsored all 5 editions of the USC Comedy Festival. And I'd also really like to thank FX for their support and enthusiasm of our special spotlight on tonight's event of what we do in the shadows. Please visit our festival website to learn about tomorrow's full lineup of Hulu original comedy featuring panels with A.D. Bryant, Rami Youssef, Patton Oswalt, Keith Knight, and many others. If you'd like to ask a question today, please type it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll try to get to as many of the questions as we can. We also have a Comedy Festival Discord server running this weekend, which you can join at any time, and we'll post a link in the chat. Tonight's spotlight on FX is What We Do in the Shadows, featuring showrunners, writers, and executive producers Paul Sims and Stephanie Robinson, and co-executive producer and writer Sam Johnson, will be moderated by SCA professor Chris Marcil, who also co-wrote the Emmy-nominated episode Collaboration from season 2 of the show. Before we start the panel, we're also going to screen a short promo from the show offered courtesy of FX. So enjoy the show, and please now welcome David Isaacs, chair of the John Wells Division of Writing for Screen and Television and co-chair of USC Comedy.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you, Alex. As Alex said, I am David Isaacs, and for those of you who are coming to our first event, if this is your first, I want to welcome you to the USC Comedy Festival, brought to you by USC Visions and Voices. This is our 5th edition of the festival, our first fully online, but that has given us the opportunity to extend our reach, and you'll see that in a moment. We have 2 people coming from Toronto. We'll also add some events and guests that would be hard to bring you under any normal circumstances, although I'd rather be back in the building. A big shout out once again to our festival producer, Alex Zago, I call him the impresario of the School of Cinematic Arts, and Brian DeAngelis, who is our Oki Feller and coordinating and running our Discord server, which Alex told you about is available in the chat room. And always a special thanks to our great support in the USC School of Cinematic Arts Dean Elizabeth Daly. Just a word about USC Comedy. If you're interested in writing, directing, or producing comedic content, or just a fan of the form, USC Comedy offers an array of curriculum designed to help you discover, develop, or enhance your comic voice. So check us out on the USC Comedy website. Since the inception of USC Comedy over a decade ago now, we've always tried to feature the writing staffs of the top comedies of the moment. Over the years, we've hosted the staffs of Modern Family, Parks and Recreation, Blackish, Big Bang Theory, just to name a few. Tonight, we're lucky to be able to meet the writers and producers of one of the, I'd say the handful of original TV comedies that appear on broadcast or cable, in this case, FX. And I'm speaking of What We Do in the Shadows, which in the last 2 years has been nominated for several Emmys, Writers Guild, and Critics' Choice Awards. So right after that, it'll be a chance for you to meet Chris Marcil, who is also one of the writers of the series, as Alex mentioned, and an adjunct professor in the Wells Writing Division, and we are damn happy to have him with us as an instructor. So let's take a look at a little promo from the series, and then we'll turn it over to Chris.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for logging in. Welcome to this panel with the writing high command of What We Do in the Shadows. Let me introduce tonight's guests. Paul Sims has played key role on a number of awesome TV shows, including Late Night with David Letterman and its spinoff, The Larry Sanders Show, News Radio, which he created, Flight of the Conchords, Girls, in Atlanta, where he is an executive producer. He's also written for the legendary Spy magazine and is a frequent contributor to The New Yorker. Executive producer Stephanie Robinson has also writes on Atlanta and has written for the somewhat unappreciated Man Seeking Woman and the most recent season of Fargo. She has been nominated for 2 Emmy Awards for writing, one for the Barbershop episode of Atlanta and the other for On the Run, which may come up tonight. Personally, I have been following the career of Sam Johnson for a long time, since his start as one of the last editors of National Lampoon through Beavis and Butthead, its spinoff Daria, Frasier, on which he also appeared, How I Met Your Mother, and Hot in Cleveland, where he was showrunner. He is a member of the Omaha Central High School Hall of Fame and has the unique comedy distinction of having been voted most popular in his high school class. Thank you guys for coming from all the way from Toronto, where it's 10. Stephanie, I know you're in LA, but you were in Toronto this morning, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So,
Hold it, Chris, are you going to leave out the part that you and Sam have been writing partners since college?
I figured I wanted to see if Sam would say. Basically, I was being passive aggressive and making to see if Sam would acknowledge that. But I see how he's playing it. So noted.
Let's just see where this conversation goes, Chris.
Yes, I am the moderator, so for once, which is good because now I can start all my sentences with talk about. So actually, how is Toronto? How is it you're making season 3, but you're also writing season 4, and it's COVID-y. So how are you doing it all?
Not the way we usually do it, I would say. We don't.
What is the way you usually do it? Because I think a lot of people don't have a full idea of what it's even like in normal times to be up writing on a show, up shooting and writing a show.
In normal times, I mean, we have a much bigger writing staff that we do the writing with, but then when we come up here to shoot, it's usually the 3 of us. I mean, last season, some of the writers, we had them come up for their episodes, but there's a lot more time that we all spend on stage watching the actual shooting. And now we're all about 75 feet from the stage, but we rarely go down there. We watch all the takes on monitors. If we do go down, we got to wear one of those and 2 masks. And so it feels a little more removed from the process than usual, but also it's the 3rd season and the actors know their characters, and we have good directors, and it's not that bad. It's whatever. It's fine. It's fine, Chris. It's great. It's great being in Toronto away from my family, going on 3 months now. It's right.
Is it better than writing in the Zoom room? Because everyone I know who's in a Zoom room, or including my students, hate it to pieces.
Yeah, it's all our writing for the season we're currently shooting and the upcoming season has been via Zoom. When we're up here, though, when we're figuring out stories or rewrites, it is nice to be able to be in the same room, even if it's just the 3 of us. But the Zoom thing is awful. And I was just talking to a writer from The Simpsons, and we were agreeing that 5 people is probably the maximum you can have for a Zoom session and still feel like you're accomplishing something.
Right. Are you guys
so if any of our current writers are watching that, there's going to be big changes next season. Sorry, we're going to have to let over half of you go, but that's just how. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's just you guys work Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a fear that the shows will still be good and people will say, well, there's no need to be together.
Yeah, I have that fear too. But on the other hand, I would retire early if I thought that the rest of this was going to be just looking at a computer screen, both for the writing and for the shooting and everything. I can't wait for it to get back to normal. But Sam and Stephanie, you guys must have some thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, I second everything that you're saying. It's tough to do such a creative job, especially in a show like ours, where it is very collaborative, and especially during shooting, it is very improvisational. And there is sort of an awkward disconnect when you're laughing really hard at the actors, but they have no idea that you're laughing at them. You're trying to communicate that to them through like 4 different people via text message or someone running down, but then also to even just try to tweak things or refine things. It's like sometimes the moments pass by the time that your message gets down there. You know, sometimes they've just moved on completely from the scene that you're trying to refine a little bit more. So it's been tough. I mean, it's kind of, I'm so happy that we're able to be making the show right now. I think a year ago, I was very depressed and anxious about the idea of potentially not going to work again, let alone this soon. So that's been nice. But the sort of bittersweet thing is that I think a lot of the joy has been sucked from the process.
Well, that's my
Yeah.
fault mainly. So, you know.
Hey, well, yeah.
Our friend Maura Tierney, who was on News Radio, was shooting something in New Orleans like a while ago, and she said basically, like, shooting is fine, it is what it is, but everything that's fun about a production is sort of missing. Like, you're just not hanging out a whole lot, you're not joking around as much, you know, down on the set, on the floor with the actors and directors, and here in Toronto, where we just went into another 4-week lockdown because there's no vaccines and whatever, everything sucks. You can't go to a movie on the weekend. You can't really do anything. So there are a lot of unfun aspects to it.
The 3 of us are sick of each other is what he's trying to say. I mean, I'm not sick of them, but I can read between the lines.
Well, the plus side is it gives you a chance to do fun panels.
Exactly. And so is your next question going to be, where do you get your ideas? I'm
No.
so happy that I think this is going to be the first panel we do where someone doesn't go like, so where do you get your ideas?
No, but I am kind of asking you what I feel is kind of a panel-y question, which is, so like, you were involved in like turning this into a TV show, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, talk about that.
Speak on that. I had worked with Jermaine on Flight of the Conchords, and I had seen the movie when he and Taika were taking it around and showing it. And I thought it was very funny. And he said they were talking about making it into a TV show. And I was excited. I was like, well, I thought the movie was so funny. That would be great. He's like, but Taika and I aren't going to be in it. And I was like, well, that's what I loved about the movie, was that you guys were so funny. That was my biggest hesitation, was like, so it's starting all over, from scratch. But then once we started auditioning and seeing some of those people, it felt like it could work. I think the only other difference is the movie was kind of, look, they made the movie like on a total shoestring budget, borrowing sets from, like, Peter Jackson had leftover Hobbit sets and they borrowed those. It was really just friends showing up to do it, and shot, hours and hours of footage and then put that together. So I think the biggest transition was making sure that the show wasn't sort of anecdotal like that, and wasn't just slice of life, but, told stories for 23-minute stories per each episode, and sometimes longer season arcs. That I think was the biggest change from the movie.
But I feel like there was another big creative move, like, already in the pilot, because like when I watched the movie again a couple weeks ago, there's a familiar, but like it's a small part, and then when you go into the pilot, Guillermo starts the show and ends the pilot, and like moving him to the center. Like, how did that come about?
Part of that was just, I think, how good Harvey is and how fun that relationship was. I think going into the pilot, that role, and also Mark Proksch as Colin Robinson they were like additional funny bits, but both of them turned out to be so good that now we do, individual stories about all of them. And Harvey certainly last season had a big long arc.
Right. So you didn't have the idea of like, he's going to be a Van Helsing.
No.
At the start.
We had that idea as a joke in the writer's room. Like, first we had the idea for the DNA tests. It was what was it? It was the DNA test where Nandor finds out that he still has living he has living great
Right,
granddaughter.
200,000 relatives. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it. And then we had the idea, well, what if Guillermo found out that he had Van Helsing blood, and then we wrote that big final episode of the season with no idea about what we were going to do next, where we just wanted to finish the season and, you know, have some time off. And then we came back in and figured out what to do about what we had just done.
Yeah, it did seem like rewatching it, like it reminded me of something, like that first scene reminded me of something Mike Schur said about like your premise, which is like it's a booster that gets you off the ground, but then has to fall away and you have to depend on your cast. And the Baron totally seemed like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, now did you like partway through? It's like, after a couple episodes, like, we got to kill this guy. Like, that's not where the show lives.
No, I think that was just the addition of the Baron and saying you guys were sent here to take over the new world. Why haven't you done anything? Was something to give structure to the pilot and not just make it like, you know, an anecdotal sort of slice of life of the vampires.
Right.
But
like sort of a why now type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Why are we starting to follow this story now? And also just, you know, the old fashioned, you know, having some jeopardy and some stakes and a problem for them. It makes it sound very cynical and formulaic, but it needed, you know, something like that. But even at the time, we knew that it wasn't going to be the whole show was about why haven't you taken over America? It was going to, because the characters are so lazy and, you know, already that the funny joke was going to be that, you know, 5 episodes later they go like, oh yeah, we were supposed to do something.
I know. Well, it's, you know, it's so true to being a writer.
Yes.
I was like, oh shit, I have something to do. And I felt like there was one, I had something. Oh, are the corners getting tighter and tighter? Like now, like, you know, like once you have like Guillermo's a vampire hunter, like now you have like story. Like arc story, it seems like to me.
Stephanie, you talk about it, man.
What, rephrase the question, Chris?
Well,
like,
what I'm saying, well, I saw that, like Paul was just saying, like you kind of painting yourself in the corner. It's like, here's our end, and I don't know how we're going to get out of it. And then you get out of it. Does it feel like you have to like up yourselves? Like you're in this, like now I got to like escalate this thing.
I mean, I don't think it's a matter of upping ourselves. It's just a matter of making the story feel like it's a story and that it's continuing and that we're not being repetitive. And because of the nature of the show, like Paul and I say all the time that it really is just a live action cartoon. Like these people, it's a sitcom in a lot of ways. These are just a bunch of dumb idiots running around, and that's sort of the charm of the show. But in terms of the story that does exist there, I think that we do care a lot about that. And I think it's less about how can we beat this and make this better and up the stakes? It's how just can we progress it in a way that doesn't feel like we're dragging the audience back to an earlier season or an earlier moment that feels like we've already done that before. Even just finding ways to, like, I feel like turn a story that isn't necessarily like, let's keep following the beats and let's beat this to death. It's more, well, now this world or this opportunity has opened up. Maybe we can take more of a left or right turn into something completely different. And I think that the show itself, I mean, when you are dealing with the basis of the show just being supernatural characters and vampires, the world does feel pretty big. So I don't think we ever struggle in that way to be like, you know, what are we going to do, just because there are so many creatures and there's so many just real world opportunities that we can put these characters in that always feel satisfying to us, at least for now with season 3.
Right.
Like,
If anything, I would think the story decisions we've made, the accidental sort of, not accidental, intentional constrictions we've placed have helped us, because, you know, a show like this that's got supernatural characters, the world's almost too big. And that's why especially when we were working on the first season, we were very meticulous about establishing some vampire rules and sticking to them, and establishing some documentary style rules and really sticking to them. You know, there oftentimes you would want a normal show, you would want a close up, but Jermaine was always one who said, you know, you really have to stick to what a documentary crew could capture. You're going to have the desire to push in closer, but that once you start messing with that basic format, everything else falls apart. And that's sort of the way it is with Vampire Rules, even though Vampire Rules, of course, are completely made up. But we try to adhere to some sort of fake reality.
And that's also my favorite part of the show. Paul and Sam both know that when I am watching the monitor, I'm constantly telling the directors or the actors, when our vampires are in real world situations, it's like, there's a camera in this scene. Like, people should be reacting to that or be grounded enough that they are aware that there's a documentary crew following a bunch of caped freaks, like in this gym or in this restaurant. And I think that's, I don't know, like finding little moments to, like Paul was saying, to make it feel real and constricted, I think is the thing that, for me, when I first saw the pilot, and when I saw the movie, was the coolest part of it, because like, I think the more that you play with that balance of the real world grounded, how constricted the laws of physics apply to regular people, the more satisfying I think all that other stuff becomes, the funny, the bigger stuff. I think that striking that balance is always, at least to me, the most important thing in this show.
Right. And when you're like mapping out a season, is it also a question of like, we want to make sure we have room for this like funny one-off idea? Like, how do you map out that arc so that it's
sometimes
not so...
and also, especially with season one, often the way Jermaine works, and I remember this from Flight of the Conchords. Flight of the Conchords, they had all these funny songs that they already existed. And a lot of that was constructing episodes the exact opposite the way you would tell someone is how you write a sitcom, which is like, we have this funny song we want to get to, and then we have this one, and then we have this one. How can we weave a story around those things? Usually, you know, when people are talking about how to write a sitcom, they're like, don't backwards engineer and Frankenstein the story just to get to these funny moments you want to do. But it's worked pretty well for us.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's just a crazy, funny thing we want to do. But there's always an incredibly tedious and pretentious sounding subtext understory about who wants what and what their obstacle is and all those things that you guys probably teach in your school. Yes. And by the way, hold it, before we forget, because I don't want to run out of time. Also on our writing staff is a graduate from the USC Cinema Arts program, Zach Dunn, successful young writer who works with us, and our editor and director, who's directing more than half of the episodes this season, Yana Gorskaya, is also a graduate of USC Cinema Arts School. So thank you, everybody, for giving us those wonderful and well-trained people.
Yes, it's money well spent for you students watching. Okay, now, right, because I also want to leave time for questions. I have a question for Stephanie, which is, because I was thinking it was Easter, so I was thinking the story of a man who was immortal but took human form to perform miracles of kindness in community, and then disappeared into the sky at the end.
Oh, wow.
So tell us about Jackie Daytona and the sort of...
What do you want to know? I feel like
I know you've been asked this a million times, but just like I think not everybody is like doing the research. So I just want to feel like, what was the story? How did he come to be?
True tale, the tale behind the tale.
Yeah.
Jackie Daytona. Well, we were in the writer's room, and this was one of those things where Paul was talking about where Jermaine and the way that Jermaine works, and I think has worked and continues to work, but just like he comes to the writer's room with just an idea or a moment or some like little wisp of something, and that becomes the thing that's the inspiration, and then we reverse engineer and try to build something around that. But for the second season, Jermaine had kind of like a vague idea about Laszlo being on the run. And I think, Paul, wasn't it, and Sam, who was supposed to be chasing him? Oh, it was supposed to be Dave Bautista's character from the first season. He had some idea. What was his name? Garrett the Vampire or something like that. He makes a very small cameo in one of the episodes of the first season.
In the trial.
In the trial, that's right. And Jermaine had like a very vague, like, I don't know, he's chasing Laszlo for something, he's broken out. And it was just something that we had talked about. And for whatever reason, I think that the idea of that character chasing him shifted and evolved. And but I think Jermaine, in our minds, at least in the beginning, was supposed to be more of this sort of cat and mouse chase thing where
much more action oriented also.
Yeah, it was like a lot of leaping off of roofs and fighting and like going through different towns, and then they're like in a warehouse maybe, and they're having like a big showdown and things like that. But I think that when we were talking about it in the writer's room, I think as a joke, I forget, I don't even know how it came up. We just sort of got attached to this idea of like, well, what if he's running and he just stays? And then that's just the episode.
Stephanie's being very modest, because as I remember, it was her saying, what if he moves to a small town, takes on another identity, pretends to be a normal person? And we were really laughing. And also in that moment, she said, the way she described it is like, and all of a sudden our documentary just becomes a completely different documentary that's sort of like, Harlan County, USA or something, about this guy who works at a bar in a small hardscrabble Pennsylvania town.
But when I said that, I thought it was funny, but I was trying to make you guys laugh. Like, I think in the back of my mind, I was like, we're never going to do this. It's just going to be like a silly thing to try to get Sam and Paul to laugh at me and everybody else.
But now I keep hearing every like big idea the show has is like, oh, we would never like this is a dumb joke.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how that works out, but
then also, so I'm going to mansplain, but it's okay because I'm talking about you in a positive way. Then when Stephanie went off and did the script, so many of the things that make that episode memorable were not pitched out in the room, but were just in the script, where like his disguise being a toothpick and a pair of blue jeans, I believe I saw for the first time in the script, and that really made me laugh. And there were so many other things like that.
His name, I don't think we ever talked about his name.
No, his name was, I remember laughing out loud seeing the script and seeing that perfectly all-American name.
What is the most obnoxiously American sounding name? It's like, I knew it had to be Daytona, and Jackie was just one of those things that came to me. Divine inspiration.
It wasn't like you had a sheet of paper of names.
It was the only name, and I remember thinking if anyone was open to changing this would be fine. That's how
then it turns out there's like an Arizona bar band called Jackie Daytona, and we had to like figure out a way to clear the name with them. Like they're whatever. If you're watching,
clearance issues are the worst part of this job. And when we got to the night before shooting, and they said that the lawyers have looked at this. There is I think they're either from Arizona or Texas. There's a band. They have a few songs on SoundCloud named Jackie Daytona. You've got to change the name. I was like, we can't do that. I mean, we had discussions about, do we, bleep the name? Do we reach out to the band? Do we have the band on the show as themselves? But then ultimately, what the lawyers were fine with was the credit tag we shot at the end, where Laszlo says, I didn't take my name from the band, and I'm only saying this because Mark and Clarence says that I have to. And then also the band, by the way, they were very nice, and they got a lot of new follows, and they were very happy with it, and so it all worked out well.
Yeah, I feel like the band would, I don't know.
Yeah,
it seems unwise to this big publicity thing.
But that was definitely a show. That episode definitely stuck out in my mind because it did feel like this is a show that's based kind of on a room bit, on just a joke that we're laughing about, and we're going to actually turn it into an episode, and it's really funny. I also loved it because it reminded me so much of like episodes of the shows I watched when I was a kid, like The Hulk or Kung Fu, just the stranger who blows into town and beats up some people and then leaves. I don't know. I just loved that.
And there was also during when we were talking about it, there was also, we discussed like, well, what's going on with the rest of the vampires? Shouldn't we, like, usually we interweave our story. Shouldn't we going back and seeing what they're doing? And we ended up only having one little scene of what they were, because part of what was so funny was that he goes to this small town, and then the rest of the story is just this it's a story
Right.
built on a digression, basically.
Exactly. And Matt Berry loved it. I think he had such a good time, and him and Mark Hamill are obviously amazing, but Matt specifically, like, I don't think he's ever had the opportunity to play just like this stereotypical American, like, just cartoon, and he was very excited. It was a lot of him calling, I think, each of us, like, he was obsessed with saying "God damn it," because that to him is the most American thing a person could say. Son of a bitch and God damn it. And he pleaded, he's like, just throw in some of those in there, it'll be all good. But he, I mean, really dedicated himself to doing that. And it might seem like Matt Berry, I feel like, has no inhibitions, but he does. And I think that he threw a lot of those out the window for this character, which I really appreciate. Like, all that dancing, him dancing to Robert Palmer, and like, he was not comfortable doing that. If you saw him on set, it was like he gave like maybe like a good like 5 seconds of that. That's enough. You walk off. But I appreciate it. Good time.
Yeah. But but the other thing with that episode, and I think you guys have talked about this a little already, but it is, and like, obviously it's like based on a room joke, and you guys are saying like this cartoon and things like that, but it's really like it's Lucy, what happens to Lucy the waitress, it's like a little heartbreaking. And like, you guys, like, did it seem like at the outset, like in the pilot and like episode, like first couple episodes, like, oh, this is what the show is going to be like, we're going to like tell the story of like this the familiar who's finds his way?
I don't know. I think as the show's progressed, and we've been less scared to have little emotional moments like that, now that it feels like people who know the characters are. It's awful when people don't know or like the characters yet, and these weird emotional moments are jammed in there. But I mean, what are you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say that I think a lot of at least for me, in my experience watching the show back, a lot of the emotional moments that I feel like exist within the show weren't necessarily things that we were like, this is an emotional beat, and this is where we're gonna try to get some feeling or whatever. Like, a lot of the times too, I will give credit to the actors for finding these things, that they do exist there on the page. And I think that maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't say that we're like flippant about these emotional beats, because they're there and we do acknowledge that they are there. But a lot of the times I am surprised when I do look back at some of the cuts or before they go to air, like, wow, like a lot of our cast is really good, or all of our cast is really good about finding these really touching, weird, strange moments sometimes when it's not even scripted. It's like, sometimes you just see scenes that to me just read completely as a joke, but the performance just changes everything completely. And it's actually kind of cool when that happens. And I feel like adds so much more depth and weirdness to this group of characters.
I think a lot of that also is being a comedy writer, you tend to wince at very special episodes or emotional, moments. The ones that are done poorly. But it's easier to do it on this show because the characters are sort of a collection of flaming assholes. So the smallest little gesture of kindness or humility can come off as much more genuine than on a show where everyone's, hugging each other all the time.
Yeah. And also, like, Laszlo, like, like, if you're not, like, if you have to kind of watch it a little bit to get the sense of, like, Laszlo and Nigel, like, have a happy marriage. Like, it's not grounded, but it's not like, put in your face, but like secretly they're happy with each other.
Yeah, they love each other. They're happy with each other, and they're both omnisexual, and there's no jealousy about the fact that they both do whatever with whoever.
Yeah.
That's fun.
That is a recipe for happiness, and I know my wife is watching right now, so take note, honey.
Isn't today your anniversary or yesterday?
It is 17 years, baby.
Happy anniversary, guys.
Yay.
Thank you.
But yeah, so like, you gave her the gift of good advice from what we do in the shadow.
Yes. Let's just watch some.
Your wife just texted me and said that you're going to have a fight later. But I thought that was a very sweet remark. I don't know. What could you do?
There's always a fight later.
That's like, yeah, it doesn't matter what time you're in. It's like Saturday night is Saturday night. We miss it if we didn't do it. I have a question for Sam, which actually anybody could answer, but I want to direct it to Sam because one of the fun facts I know about Sam is that he and his improv group performed at the Arts Festival associated with the 1988 Calgary Winter Olympics. So he's true. He's no stranger to cross-border arts initiatives.
Sure.
Well. More new information about Sam.
Yeah. I believe the big billboard slogan at the time was, "If it ain't Alberta beef, it ain't food," or something like that.
Oh, God.
Really pushing the Alberta beef in Calgary at the time.
For people to take home to, their Luxembourg and other things. But you guys have talked about this a little bit. But how does it work with the improv? That was my hook for the improv question.
Oh man, and like it's crazy. I mean,
talk about the improv.
The actors really should get a writing credit because they do so much stuff like that's. I mean, they're great with doing the scripted material, but they're all very funny just on their own, and like I think Matt and Natasha definitely have kind of an improv sort of background, and Kevin too does for that matter, but like they've all just been great. Mark is hilarious. Like you do a few takes of as written, and then the director say, all right, well now do the way you want to do it, and it's often just hilarious.
But do they ever improv on? Oh, go ahead.
The one thing I'll add to that, just since this is a college setting or university setting, is that we do script the show extremely meticulously and really work and write and rewrite and make the best version. So it's the improv is great addition to that, and we use a ton of that. But it doesn't mean if you have great improvisers, you can go into a show and go like, hey, just try to elevate this scene or make it funny. You know what I mean?
I think that because the scripts are so tight that our cast is able to shine when they do improvise, tooting our own horns a little bit.
Yeah, but, no, and you're welcome on this end.
I think this is a show that I have done the most rewriting on and the most reworking and the most, in my career thus far. Like it has been the most staying up late, that scene's not working, that joke's not working, that moment's not working, it's too long, that part's too clunky. Paul is right, it is very meticulous, but I think Sam is also absolutely correct too, that because we are very meticulous about the joke or the moment or what is funny about the scene and being able to clearly distill that and get that point across, that I think it becomes much easier for the actors to sort of trampoline off of that and go crazy. And then oftentimes they will come to us and say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, I was reading the scene. Could this moment be something like this? Is it okay if I try this? But there's a lot of trust and a goodwill going back and forth. I mean, even in like the table reads, Paul and Sam know too, like we'll have table reads and the actors will try things there. And if it's funnier than what we have, that's what's in the script eventually. So I think it's a great partnership, but Paul is right. It's very, very scripted. With some
so they're not improving on story. It's just at the level of the line.
No, but having that, I think that's one thing that helps their improv be so good is that, each scene has a solid conflict and a point to it. And it's so much easier to improv when you know what your goal is and what's standing in your way rather than just like, hey, be funny about X, Y, or Z. You know what I mean?
It's also knowing what actors on our cast are good at what. I think when you get to know them personally and know the types of jokes or the types of moments that are appealing to Harvey versus Matt versus Natasha, it becomes much easier to write to their strength. And they have enough trust and understanding, I think, from us at this point that it's like, okay, I understand sort of what you set me up for. And I feel like I have permission or empowered to go and do this thing that I'm good at.
No, that's why it's a pain in the ass. One of the pains in the ass of writing a pilot is you have no actor to write. Like you have no voice.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and also like what you say is, I think one of the signs of a good show is that like the writers are like trying to like live up to the quality of the actors and vice versa. Like you're I think working harder in a sense than you would because you like you don't want to disappoint them with a bad script.
That's definitely true. And I would also say, I think as with the best shows I've worked on, I think just as writers, we're just trying to make each other laugh. You know what I mean? And hope that everyone else laughs at the same things that we do. You know what I mean? Know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
I have like just like one or two more questions because I know we have audience questions and I know it's getting late. This is actually sort of, I kind of want to ask this, in the sort of USC academic context, as like people who have to, like, if there's a vacancy in your staff, have to read, 60, however, like many dozen scripts. What is a quality in when you have to go through that stack that comes out for you?
I got a lot of thoughts. I liked the old days when people would write. When I was first wanting to write for sitcoms, everyone was like, "You got to write a spec cheers. You got to write a spec cheers. That's the only way to get hired." I actually miss those days, and I think for legal reasons now, like if someone writes a great "What We Do in the Shadows," we can't even read it because there's too much legal exposure for us getting sued. So most people these days write, an original thing. There's no way to say it without being pretentious. I just look for like a unique voice that doesn't feel like it's trying to I don't know. I mean, even in the spec script days, the uniqueness of the person's voice would come through. I can give some real, since we're theoretically teaching here, I can give some good tips. When any showrunner or whatever picks up your sample script to read it, the first thing they do is flip to the last page and see how many pages it was. And if it's 45 pages, they're like, "Oh God." If you can get it down to 33 pages, they're going to be like, "Oh, I'll read this. And this is going to be a fast read and it's going to be fun." And you're always going to think there's no way you can get it down to 33 pages, but there always is a way, and it's going to make it better and it's going to make someone want to read it. So in other words, my answer is short scripts.
Well, yeah, no, I was like saying in class, just like you have to really put yourself in the position of you guys having to get through all these scripts.
But also, it's not just about our lays. It's also a medium which is 22 to 23 minutes long. And even when you see a show on Netflix where someone was like, "Now we're going to do a 35-minute comedy episode around 22 minutes," you start going like, "Feels like this should be wrapping up around now." So it's the whatever.
Yeah, no, but actually I was like, that thought had crossed my mind because you have to be on FX and I assume there's like a rough time window. That's helpful.
Yes. I think any constriction is helpful. If someone says, just be funny for 30 pages, that's impossible. If someone says, "Can you make it about a doctor and also he thinks he's a dog and it's going to be played by Matthew Modine," then there's a puzzle to solve, and I can deliver that.
Right.
Maybe not that exact one, but
Chris, we're writing sonnets here, is what we're doing.
Yeah, I don't have a good comeback for that because your answer itself was, like a haiku, like short and perfect.
Beautiful.
Now because in my head, I'm like trying to think of the Dr. Barkingham pilot. My final question before we turn it over to the audience is, are you like, Stephanie, are you still working on Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, we're shooting right now in Atlanta.
Right.
So
are you still doing it, Paul? Or are you? Or
I do it as much as I ever did, which is I read the scripts and I go, "God, this is a funny one."
Right.
And then I watch the cuts and I go, "Oh man, you guys did it again." And every once in a while I'll get a call saying, "Oh, there's a problem with this." And I'll call someone else and say, "Hey, can you fix that problem?" Right. I'm the luckiest person in the world. I just get to read and see Atlanta before everyone else.
So my question is, like, do you have plans for a crossover episode between these two shows?
Yeah.
We actually, and now that I'm thinking about it, now that we have a specific character, yes, we do, and I can't reveal it. But
Right.
Stephanie, are you thinking of the same one I am?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Okay. Good.
Yeah, I'm manifesting that. I'm putting that out in the universe.
All right.
So hopefully Alex is ready. He's going to be question guy for our like long-suffering audience to get to ask some question.
Alex, before you ask a question, can I ask a question too? Is David Isaacs still on here?
Dude.
Oh, see, now I can.
He's still technically his name is still in the panelist side.
All right. Well, if he comes back on, I have a question for him about MASH. Oh, there he is.
Wait a minute. Let me light myself. Hold on.
All right. Oh, I like this
Give
actually.
me a second. I need to be backlit. Hold on. Okay.
David, you wrote on MASH, right?
I sure did.
So I met Alan Alda once, and he was talking about the respect they had for the writers there, since they were shooting up at the place up in the hills or whatever. And he said that when they would never deviate from a single word that the writers wrote, and there were times that scripts came with typos, and they had to double check to make sure that wasn't exactly how they wanted it said. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was that granular, but it's true. I mean, we did. I'll tell you one funny story. Let's slow this down, but there was great respect, and it all came from Gelbart. I mean, Larry was considered God, which we all tried to copy what Larry did, even Alan in his writing, but no one could do Gelbart. He was like Mozart. But they would it's a funny thing when they were out out in Malibu there, and it'd be in the middle of the summer because you'd have to shoot till maybe September, one day a week out there, and then you'd lose the light. And it was no point in going on. So if you see the shows later in the season, everything is on the set. But they would get a little pissy sometimes about a line or something, and then everybody would start chiming in, like Berghoff was great at that. And my writing partner, who suffers no fools, or is Ken Levine, who's a bit of a crank when he wants to be, we'd walk away from it and he'd go, "That was a good line. What the hell is going on?" He goes, "I'll tell you what, I'm going back to rewrite." He goes, "Next week's show. And I feel a very big chill coming down from Manchuria next week." So we would make it a cold show, and they'd have to go out there and wear the big heavy stuff with and put fire in those trash cans. And he'd just sit there and go, "Well, try that again next week." Anyway.
That's great.
It's also
Never
great,
tell-
like writer
never-
retaliation. of,
Never
like, I'm
tell
not
that to
gonna argue
Alan,
with
by
you.
the way. Never tell that to Alan.
It seems very writerly. Like, I'm not going to tell you I'm mad.
Yeah,
I'm just going to.
I'm gonna make you suffer and pretend I had nothing to do with it. Yes.
It's like a brilliant genius plan.
All right, Alex, I relinquish the floor back to you.
Yes. While I have you, Alex, thank you for Alex has put this whole festival together, and he's had 5 panels today, and does it all. So much appreciation to you.
Well, luckily, I am obsessed with what we do in the shadows. So this is a really great way for us to wrap up the Saturday lineup. Okay, so Jay is asking about the season 1, episode 7, Celebrity Vampire Council.
Yes.
And what was the process of getting all those people on board? And I just want to add, was there anyone that you tried to get that you didn't, seeing as you have a lot of people referenced, but I'm guessing you probably weren't actually out to Brad Pitt. I could be wrong.
No, that one, the Taika had met, what's her name? Tilda, and she had seen their movie and had jokingly said, "Oh, I want to be a vampire sometime."
She was in Only Lovers Left Alive, which I think was around out around the same time, where she did play a vampire, her and Tom Hiddleston, and What We Do in the Shadows I think had just come out, and she had made a joke about there being some kind of crossover movie with those characters.
So she was the first one cast, and then I think that helped other people realize that it was going to be cool. And then Evan Rachel Wood was into it. I mean, yeah, then we got all the people and Danny Trejo and Paul Rubens. And then the way we shot it was the most ass backwards, impossible, ridiculous way of shooting it.
What you guys don't see is that I am dressed in a robe, like the rest of the council, and I was jumping from spot to spot to spot, reading in Toronto, pretending to be Albuquerque. We even had anybody cast at that point, so it was like, we were like, I hope we get Wesley Snipes because we're reading these Wesley Snipes lines. And I would jump around for the eye lines, and just in case the camera shot me, and then we would do takes of specific actors' names, and then we would do takes where like their names weren't there. It was a long, very confusing day.
I mean, yeah, one thing that helped it was the conceptual idea of making that chamber a big black void, that went off into nowhere. But when we were shooting it, we didn't even know necessarily who all the people were going to be. We're in Toronto, so the big masker in the main shot is our actual vampires, and then about a month later in LA, we had a day at a little studio where Tilda and Paul Rubens and Danny Trejo and Evan Rachel Wood all came. But it boggled the way Taika and Jermaine and the DP managed to put it together boggles the mind, because it was having to remember who was standing where and in what direction they were saying their lines to. And
then Paul, you had to do Wesley Snipes in a completely different shoot.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. It was one of the most exciting moments of my life. Wesley Snipes, I had to meet in a hotel room in New Jersey with a laptop, because originally he said we could shoot at his house, and he's like, I don't want all these people in my house. There's a hotel here. So we went and set it up there, and then he did his part on a computer, the computer recording it, and with an iPhone duct taped to it and a GoPro duct taped to it, just in case the computer didn't record it right. And he was Skyping with Jermaine, who was in New Zealand, who was doing the other side of it. It was very exciting.
This is from Emma, who came up with the idea of the energy vampire. Can you tell us a bit about how that character came about?
That was Jermaine's idea, and it was one of the new ideas that was not in the movie that existed in all the versions of the pilot script. And it's just, it's a funny, natural thing. We all either know an energy vampire or are energy vampires ourselves, and no one will tell us. And then when I read that, I will take credit for recommending Mark Proksch for that, because I'd seen him on Cinema at the Cinema, the Tim Heidecker show, and the incredibly funny pilot he has that you can see on YouTube. And it just seemed, I don't think we even had anyone else read for that. There were two parts that we went into it knowing the people. One was Mark, and the other one was Matt Berry as Laszlo. And the other people, it was a search for them, but those roles were basically written for them.
As like Jackie Daytona for me was the absolute pinnacle of height of comedy from last year, but seeing Colin Robinson in that episode where he gets like the superpowers was a very close second for me.
Yeah, that was fun.
Who
wrote that? Shayna? Was that Shayna?
That was Shayna.
Shayna Goad wrote that. It was very good.
Very good.
Okay, so has it, this is from Harry, has it ever been considered to give the Unseen documentary crew more of a part in the story, that they are characters that could ever become more visible and take more of a part in the stories?
We talk about it all the time, and there have been a few times where we've seen them that I personally don't like, but everyone else likes. There's after the vampires were stuck in the well and almost died, we had a little credit tag where you see that the documentary crew was left behind there, and I don't like it, but you guys everyone else liked it, so we did it. I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't know. I do think that the Office, in that last season, I think it was the last season, I really did like the transition they made where the documentary crew suddenly became part of the show. And so since they did it, it worked, we'll probably do it eventually.
That's how you'll know it's the last season.
Yeah. Oh, we're doing the Office stuff. And Michael Scott is in the show for some reason. All right, I guess it's time to wrap it up.
Right. And everyone's happy to see him back, even though we haven't seen him yet.
Have you, okay, this is from Abby. Have you all ever discussed the limits and boundaries of Colin Robinson?
Nonstop. So much. So much. I mean, and all of them, but our frequent discussions about, well, what is an energy vampire and where did they come from and are they immortal and all that, our endless discussions of that have led to a big arc in the season we're shooting right now where Colin Robinson himself is trying to find out what he is and what his origins are and where he came from. So stay tuned.
Oh, I had a question from rewatching it in preparation for this of like, Nandor is so like insecure and like tender. Was that always like built into that character as you were thinking about it? Or did it just like it play to Kaven's strengths, or how'd that happen?
I feel like, Paul, I mean, I wasn't there from the very, very beginning, but in season 1, at least, I feel like that, at least from when we were talking about season 1, was Nandor's just big problem was that he was once this furious warrior who's become complacent over time. And I think that's within the context of, or the constraints of that season, it made sense and was funny and it was just sort of a funny thing to see. But now I think it has blossomed into sort of a ever-going struggle with that character.
It also came out of the basic sort of like roommate humor of the show is that he was once this great warrior who commanded armies, and now he can't even get these other 3 people to listen to him about keeping the house clean, you know, and has sort of still has all this supernatural power, but has no ability to make the people he lives with listen to him.
Right, but he also seems like sort of sad, or low. There's kind of an emotional quality to him. That's not just.
Chris, you are going to love season 3.
Stay tuned,
of which you wrote one of the episodes with Sam. So you've probably actually read it all. Chris, maybe up season 3 for everyone.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to set myself up so that it's like, well, that's covered so well in your episode.
Whatever the next question is, Sam's going to take it.
Oh boy.
Well, in that case,
talk more about Jackie.
Can Chris and Sam talk a bit about writing their Emmy-nominated episode together? Was it meant to be an allegory about the perils of capitalism?
Sorry, Sam. Just let me interject. If anything, it was a celebration of the wonders of capitalism. Anyway, go ahead.
I feel like that my daughter must be watching this. That question to get through.
Yeah, I don't know. We never explicitly thought of it that way, but that was certainly something that came up. I mean, I think what Chris and I really liked about this, I mean, we liked a lot of things about it. I mean, there's the relationship between Nandor and Guillermo is really featured in this. There's a scene of Nandor coming to visit Guillermo after he's kind of run off to be the familiar, this other vampire, that I like because it just reminded me of like trying to talk to my dad when I was in college and like having absolutely nothing to say to him, and he sort of struggling to come up with something to say to me. And also, like, I don't want to speak for Chris on this, but I also really related in the episode of like the old familiar and just like an old man kind of walking around in this young person's house, which is basically how I feel every day at work. But that, there's a lot of that episode that I loved. I will say also that like Julie, my wife, when we were watching the first season, she would say, "Oh, this show is really a love story between Nandor and Guillermo," which I hadn't really picked up on, but I think a lot of that is true, and I did like that episode because of that. But
well, that's a perfect segue to Julie's question. That Guillermo and Nandor is the greatest will they, won't they, since Ross and Rachel or Sam and Diane, will there be a happy ever after for them?
Julie, I'm trying. The amount of times I'm like, they got a kiss at the end of this. Can they kiss?
I think their love is bigger than a sexual.
You're right.
There's a component there, but it's bigger and deeper and more profound than mere sex that you mortals engage in.
Yeah, sure.
So is his failure to make Guillermo a vampire like fear of commitment?
It could be that. It could be a fear that once he makes his familiar into a vampire, he loses his best little buddy. I think that sometimes it could be that he just doesn't give a shit. It could be a lot of things, all of which will be explored extensively in season 3. This is like a promo for season 3. It's just months too early.
For Stephanie, how can your brain possibly balance working on What We Do in the Shadows and Atlanta simultaneously?
I get this question a lot, and I feel like I always have a disappointing answer, which is that it is very easy for me, and I don't know why.
Well, Stephanie's favorite movie is Austin Powers, and Stephanie likes silly, in the most positive way, in the way that I do too, silly, crazy stuff. And I think sometimes when people talk about Atlanta, they forget that Atlanta is very surreal and silly in its, in its own way.
I think, yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe they satisfy different things within my psyche. I think there's something that I maybe get different things from both of them. Like Atlanta is very autobiographical, and a lot of the things that we are writing are based on things that have happened to us through our life. And it is, in a way, a therapy session on top of all the silly and crazy things that I think make that show special and so fun to do. But they exist in completely separate chambers of my brain, and they never really, interact. So it's a pretty easy thing to keep separate for me. But they are very silly and fun. So that's,
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as a question, but then I was thinking it's like every writer I know is like usually working on like 2 or more like projects, some of which are very different tonally. So it's also just part of what it is to do this job.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. It is just the job. Like I for the most part, try to attach myself, and I've been very lucky to attach myself to projects that I think, oh, I would watch that. That's fun and that's funny to me. And I think, yeah, there is the work element to it. Like this is just the job is to write, and not 2 shows are ever really going to be the same completely.
This is from JD. Did you ever find decent pizza in Toronto? Meaning, what is it like to be on location for such long stretches as a writer?
Well, Paul, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what we had for dinner last night?
If you come to Toronto, the pinnacle of the cuisine in Toronto, no, there's a restaurant called the Captain's Boil, which is like Cajun seafood in a big plastic bag that you dump out and get all of yourself. I love it. And we had it last night. And it's still sitting in the garbage can in the office, the leftovers, and it stinks in here. But it was worth every moment. No, it is. I will say about Canada first of all, I got so many thoughts. Number 1, I'm very happy to be working right now and that the people on the show have jobs. Number 2, of course, I hate being away from my family and America. And number 3, we have great, our stunt people, our special effects people, our prop people up here are really, really good. And that's one of the things that makes this show so fun, is it really feels like what you imagined before you got into TV writing. It really feels like what you imagined it would be like, where you're having conversations about, well, if he jumps off the roof, is he on fire already? Or does he land and does a fireball come up, and doing all that fun, crazy stuff that you imagined TV would be like.
And it's also, Toronto, the cast and us, the writers and producers, are coming from places that aren't Canada. So we are our own family, I think, too, which is, it feels like a summer camp in a way. And inevitably, because we can't go home to see our partners, our kids, our friends, we have to be that support system for each other, which sounds very cheeseballs and emotional and dumb.
No, it's right. I will note that I do like my
feelings.
I like my own real family better than any of you guys, but you're a close second.
I don't know if you young people out there are into geocaching, but the scene here is very cool.
And Sam's not joking. He and I actually have done a lot of geocaching here in Toronto, so look it up.
No, I was talking to Sam. I was like, yeah, no, Paul and I listen to Canadian talk radio. on the way to the office.
I feel like wherever you travel to, you want to get the thing that you can only get there. So we listened to the day that Wayne Gretzky's father died. That was topic A on all the stations. And the other big news story.
It was like Prince Philip.
Exactly. It was Canada's Prince Philip. The other big news story here, since we have been up here this time, was the day was it a beaver that got onto the got into the subway station and they had to shut down the whole subway during rush hour? That's the kind of stuff that goes on up here.
Wait, was he on the tracks or was he just in the station?
No, he was on the platform.
Okay.
Yeah,
but just out of
mezzanine.
Yeah, out of an abundance of caution, just got to shut down all the trains.
Somebody still tried to trap him because of the old ways.
That pelt is worth some money. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
As comedy writers, when someone tells you they don't think something is funny, how do you find the line of pressing through and fighting for your joke versus abandoning it and moving on for ease?
Sam?
Yes. Well, that's funny. I was, that's one of the great things about having a writing partner anyway, is like there's always somebody there who will tell you it's not funny, or if not tell you, will remove the offending joke from the script that you're writing together. So like for Chris and me, it's like a battle of sort of passive people.
Yeah, that's the secret, is that we're both passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Because I think it's good to be like, whatever it is, but for harmony, be both of you be that, like the neat person and a sloppy person discord. My wife and I are both like not super tidy, and so neither of us have cause to get mad at the other, although it still happens. But
I also feel like, to me, in my experience, jokes like are infinite. There's always jokes, and if something doesn't work or if somebody doesn't like it, okay, fine, fuck it, we'll come up with something else. There's so many other jokes, but every once in a while there's something that you really love and you want to at least try. Like I think that's always.
And I think with the three of us, and even with the other writers, there are when you like each other, when you trust each other, you can go like, I don't know, that's not so fun. And the person's like, can we just try it? And you go like, all right, let's give it a try. You know what I mean? There's one joke from last season I still don't like because I found it too raunchy. But Stephanie and Sam both really liked it, and so it went in, and it's pretty good.
What is it? Do y'all remember?
I don't even want to repeat it because I find it way too raunchy and grotesque. And I think it might have been, was it in your guys' episode about?
Yes, it was.
I'm not even talking about it, man.
I don't remember. I'm sure it's great.
we've written so many raunchy jokes.
It was, maybe that's what it was. Is I found it unusually raunchy for you two.
I think it was an improvisation that was made.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
It was an improvisation within the constraints of the scene that you guys had written that went a little far off the rails, but I liked it. I liked it because it made blush, and I like that kind of thing.
Not like we're backing away in the new season either. So stay tuned.
It's just pure raunch from me. Like I'm like really into the 70s-ish of the word raunch.
Yeah, this show is a raunchy, filthy show.
Yeah.
There are elements of raunch.
People making love all the time. How are you guys doing? Because we're sort of at time.
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
There's just a few sort of quick ones that I thought we could wrap up on, so I'll just throw these out here. Is there going to be any more topiary in this season?
The topiaries are always there in the background, and sometimes I worry that people who like just joined the show in the second season are like, why are there topiaries of vaginas in the background, not knowing that's Laszlo's particular hobby, but they're always there. I don't know.
I think we're shooting something in that area maybe this week, so we'll see.
All right, well, we'll have to feature them.
Will we ever catch up with Jenna Elfman and find out?
Jenna the vampire.
Sorry, Jen Elf.
Jenna, oh yes, Beanie Fieldstein. I think one of the fun things about the show is that people who even stop by for a minute, we always have ideas for them to return. So that's possible.
Okay, so where can I get a Nadia doll?
God, where can I get a Nadia doll?
Yeah, great cue.
I
get this question all the time, but we don't even have yet. I feel like the set doesn't even have enough Nadia dolls, like this production.
Well, when I first saw the Nadia doll, I was like, I would love to have one of those to take home with me. And then when they told me how expensive it was, and when I saw that it takes 2 different people to operate it, I was like, maybe some other time. I would love to have Nadia dolls.
Can't they make like a plush, just a little plush Nadia doll that doesn't do anything? It just looks like that.
Same. I want one with that little porcelain face and the whole thing.
Yeah, Chris, that's like, oh, here's your Dairy Queen, a chunk of hard ice cream from Walmart. Just as good.
Oh yeah, this is good.
I can make you a Starbucks right here.
Is anyone in the writer's room from Staten Island? And how do you incorporate that location into the series? Is it ever limiting?
Not really. Season 1, Tom Sharpling, his wife was from Staten Island, so he helped us keep it sort of accurate. And I've shot on Staten Island a few times, so I sort of know, what it's like. And no, it's not limiting. I mean, our only frustration is trying to recreate it in Toronto, and there are more, we do a good job, but like Toronto has like a electric tram system that has wires going over the heads. You have to really sort of look around to make sure that it looks like a part of America that most Americans have never been to. So, Yeah,
we spent some time this season actually talking about like a set involving a subway station in Staten Island before we realized, though, Staten Island doesn't actually have a subway. So scrapped it.
We spent a lot of time talking about the abandoned subway station before someone was like, guys, I don't think that exists.
What a great actually. Like they're just waiting and waiting. I have this actually just loaded.
So I want to let you guys go, but there's just this one thing that I want you guys to make sure that you see, which is this What We Do in the Shadows fan film that someone has posted in the chat. I know in the Q&A box. So I'm just going to plop this in here for you to check out at your own leisure.
Excellent.
And one final.
So hold it. Before you go, now when you're going to give us the Oki Award, because we have our speech prepared, or is that someone else get that this year, or what's going on? I thought.
Hader got it.
Oh, well, I like him. So we have to share it with him this year? Is that the tie?
I think
they said the wrong name.
If David Isaacs is still on, maybe he can.
Paul, you need one? I got like 8 in my drawer.
Oh yes, I will send you my address. Thank you.
I'll swing one for you. Thank you guys so much for this. Really, kind of makes me nostalgic for the writer's room. Although I, too old for it.
I don't know. Do you have your passport? If you want to come up to Canada sometime.
I've been to.
You're never too old
Toronto.
for the Cajun bucket or whatever that restaurant.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you got to go to Canada for good Cajun food.
Yeah, I'm too old.
Well, actually, they're all from Canada, so.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
That's where Korean, Cajuns come from.
The Maritimes.
Right. Nobody needs a history lesson.
David, this is why you're not in a writer's room anymore.
I know. I'll come up and I'll sit with you guys, but if I fall asleep, you got to nudge me.
Well, Stephanie will be the only one who's awake because Sam and I also are often nodding off. So
absolutely.
And I love Atlanta too, which I love to talk about. It's a great show.
Well, thank you guys so much. This was really a treat. And Chris, I really appreciate you coming in and hosting this for us.
It was as easy as like going over to my wife's office. So
Great job.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you guys once again. Thank everybody for coming, and we'll see you next year at the Oki Awards.
Excellent. All right. Bye, everyone.
guys.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
everyone. Thank you again, Chris.
Bye.